Namaskar, my dear friends. This is video number 13 on the series of Brahma and his various aspects as described in Upanishads. This video starts with liberation, Moksha, the plane of the moon and the worlds of the insignificant creatures fall to the lot of those who are attached to material things, cling to individual life, cherish desires, and seek the results of action. Those who seek release from death and practice spiritual discipline, on the other hand, gain Brahmaloka, where one experiences immortality in a relative sense. But the reflective man, in whom the higher faculties of the mind are awakened, longs for release from phenomenal existence itself, with all its fetters and bonds that keep the senses tied to the world. The assurance of rebirth may bring happiness to those who are afraid of annihilation after death or of the boredom of heaven, but life on earth in any form cannot escape old age, disease, and death. The law of karma is inexorable here and in heaven, or as a matter of fact, anywhere in time and space. The individual soul is bound by this chain of cause and effect. The seeker after liberation therefore resolves upon cutting the knot by turning away from the entire phenomenal existence of life, space, and causality. True, the destruction of individuality and the suppression of the natural cravings are regarded by many as the severest punishment, but these are the supreme reward for the spiritual endeavor of those who aspire to true immortality. What impelled the rishis of the Upanishads to regard the whole of phenomenal existence as evil and the absorption of individuality in Brahma as the highest good? It was not their desire to escape the sufferings of existence, well known to all. It was not their unwillingness to face the problems of life, nor was it the result of frustration, which it is often stated was experienced by the majority of the Hindus because they were always exploited by a handful of Brahmin priests and Kshatriya rulers. Life on the banks of the Ganges and the Indus was happy, affluent, and colorful. It was filled with the joy of adventure, as evidenced by the many sided development of Hindu society at that time. Moreover, the longing for liberation was not cultivated by the downtrodden masses but by reflective minds belonging to the upper caste. The Brahmin boy Nachiketa spurned all the happiness of earth and heaven in order to attain liberation. Maitreyi refused to accept from her Brahmin husband her share of wealth, which makes a worldly person happy, because she wanted to know the secret of immortality. The desire for liberation, as we shall presently see, was not the result of any extraneous conditions. It was the necessary consequence of the doctrine of Brahma and Atma developed in the Upanishads. One studying this Upanishadic doctrine, unique and original in the entire range of human thought, cannot but admire the daring of the Hindu mind in the field of metaphysical speculation. And as one witnesses men and women in all stages of life ready to sacrifice everything for the sake of immortality and freedom, one cannot but be impressed by their tremendous willpower. The complete renunciation of everything one holds near and dear in the mortal world, including inordinate attachment to one's own body, ego, and individual self, is the sine qua non of the realization of freedom. And yet, the Vedas and the books of the Hindu Dharma ask a Hindu to cultivate a warm love of life. One must enjoy on earth 100 years, the lifespan allotted to man by God. Marriage is compulsory for Hindu men and women except in a few specified cases. One without progeny goes after death to the abode of suffering. Without money, no all-round happiness can be enjoyed. enjoyed. One must heighten the power of the senses so that through enjoyment of material pleasures one may relieve the drab grey of everyday existence. The first period of life should be devoted to the acquisition of learning, the second to the enjoyment of material pleasure, and the third to the contemplation of the gods so that after death one may attain untold happiness in heaven. Through wealth one conquers this world, through progeny the world of the fathers, and through sacrificial offerings the world of the gods. All of this is minutely described in the Vedas, which to a Hindu are the source of spiritual wisdom. He must not only study the Vedas but actually perform the sacrifices that are enjoined. And yet, the three worlds, earth, heaven, and interspace, will one day disappear. Brahma, the creator God, with all the dwellers in the highest heaven, will also perish. The Vedic sacrifices bring rewards that are contaminated by Maya and the three gunas. The enquirer after immortality must transcend the Vedas. He is required to cut at the very foundation of the attachment that supports the phenomenal existence here and hereafter. He must relinquish the longing for wealth, progeny, and the heavenly world. These make one forgetful of Atman. The forgetfulness of one's true self is the greatest suffering for a man. Everything that is not Atma is trivial, alpam. There is no real happiness in the trivial, the only happiness is in the infinite, Bhuma. Why then did the Vedas lay down injunctions for a religious life and the propitiation of the gods through sacrifices? The earthbound soul must learn through actual experience the futility of attachment to material things. It must pass through the whole gamut of empirical existence, from that of the blade of grass to the noble life of Brahma. Only then will it cultivate dispassion for Maya and its effect. Those alone who have renounced all longing for the pleasures found no earth and also for the felicity in heaven described in the Vedas can cultivate vairagyam, dispassion, and become entitled to the knowledge of Atma. Every soul, it is true, after going through all the worldly experiences, will in course of time attain liberation. But the Vedic scheme of life shortens the period of our sojourn in the relative world. It is quite natural for people to regard that as the highest aim of personal endeavor, which they consider to be the basis of the universe and the first principle of things. Those who regard the deities in that light seek union with them after death. Thus, they worship various gods in order to obtain fellowship and companionship with them in heaven. Again, those who consider Brahma to be the origin and end of things naturally want union with it. Brahma, pure consciousness, is the same as Atma. Therefore, the attainment of Atma becomes the supreme goal of life. That's why the realization of Atma has been stressed in the Vedas. Only he who knows the Purusha escapes from the realm of death. By no other road is it possible to go. The self is his pathfinder. He who finds him is no longer stand by action that evil things. He is my soul, thither to the soul on my departure hence shall I go. The nature of Brahma or Atma is existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. It dwells in every heart. On account of Maya, a man is not conscious of his true self. So, the only way to liberation is that of the knowledge of the self. Ethical laws, sacrificial ceremonies, philanthropic works, austerities, study of scripture, worship, and other similar spiritual disciplines only serve to remove the impurities of the mind, which hinder the manifestation of Atma. Atma is to be known now and here, and not elsewhere after death. If a man knows Atma here, he then attains the true goal of life. If he does not know it here, a great destruction awaits him. Therefore, the Upanishads lay down again and again self knowledge as the condition for self realization, and the Vedic seers admonish us to ask for this knowledge in our daily prayers. Moksha or liberation is not the result of knowledge. It is not a new acquisition. Causation applies to the realm of becoming and not to Brahma, which is pure being and beyond all categories. Causation rules the finite world of the manifold. It is inconceivable in Atma, which is one and without a second. If moksha were the result of knowledge and were therefore endowed with a beginning, it would then come to an end. It would not be eternal. Arising from non existence, it would again dissolve into nothingness. Moksha, liberation, cannot have a beginning and be eternal. Liberation is therefore not something which is created, but is the realization of that which has existed from eternity, but has hitherto been concealed from us. All jivas are ever free from bondage and pure by nature. They are ever illumined and liberated from the very beginning. As people who do not know the location of hidden gold fail to find it through walking over it again and again. So likewise, all these creatures day after day go into the world of Brahma, being merged in Brahma while asleep and yet do not discover it because they are carried away by untruth. He who knows the self is liberated. Even the gods cannot prevent his being so, because he has realized himself to be the very soul Atma of the gods. He who knows the Supreme Brahma verily becomes Brahma. He has attained the true immortality, that is to say, indestructibility, without a continued existence, and not the state of non-dyingness in heaven. Thus, according to the Upanishads, liberation is not the result of the knowledge of Atma. It is that knowledge. It is not affected by the knowledge of Atma, but this knowledge is itself liberation in its fullness. Desire is death. Desirelessness is liberation. He who has realized himself as Brahma, infinite and all pervading, he who sees the whole universe in himself and himself in the universe, cannot desire anything. What can he crave who has attained all desires? The fetters of the heart are broken, all doubts are resolved, and all works cease to bear fruit. What happens to a knower of the self after death? What path does he follow? What path could he follow? He finds himself everywhere in the whole universe. The east is the eastern prana, the southern prana, the western prana, the north, the northern prana, the direction above, the upper prana, the direction below, the nether prana, and all the quarters, the different pranas. Whither will the soul of the knower of Atma go? It does not go to any place where it has not been from the very beginning, nor does it become anything other than what it has always been, that is to say, Brahma, pure consciousness. Unillumined souls go to heaven or return to earth for the satisfaction of their unfulfilled desires. He who desires is reborn, but the man who does not desire is not reborn. Of him who is without desires, who is free from desires, the objects of whose desire have been attained, and to whom all objects of desire are but the self, the pranas do not depart. Being but Brahma, he is merged in Brahma. Regarding this, there is this verse. When all the desires that dwell in his heart are gone, then he, having been mortal, becomes immortal and attains Brahma in this very body. Just as the lifeless slough of a snake is cast off and lies on an ant hill, so does his body lie. Then the self becomes disembodied and immortal. It becomes the supreme Brahma, the light. The knower of Brahma is like a man who is awakened from sleep and dreams no more of empty things. He is like a man who, having been sick, is now whole again. He is like a man who, having been blind, has received back his eyesight. The knowledge of the self liberates a man from desire, fear, and death. He who sees this does not see death or illness or pain. He who sees this sees everything and obtains everything everywhere. He who knows the bliss of that Brahma from whence all speech with the mind turns away, unable to reach it, fears nothing. There is one supreme ruler, the inmost self of all beings, who makes his one form manifold. Eternal happiness belongs to the wise who perceive him within themselves, not to others. When all the desires that dwell in the heart fall away, then the mortal becomes immortal and here attains Brahma. When all the ties of the heart are severed here on earth, then the mortal becomes immortal. This much alone is the teaching. When the light has risen, there is no day, no night, neither existence nor non existence. The blessed one alone is there. That is the eternal, the adorable light of the sun, and the ancient wisdom proceeded thence. As flowing rivers disappear in the sea, losing their names and forms, so a wise man freed from name and form attains the Purusha who is greater than the great. How does a jivanmukta, a liberated soul, act? How does he move? How does he live? Ordinary minds cannot understand his actions, life, or moments any more than a dreaming man can see the world of the awakened. The rishis of the Upanishads declare that a Jivan Mukta is free from desires. Akamanyamana, Akamayannamana. The ancient sages, it is said, did not desire children, thinking, what shall we achieve through children? We who have attained this self, this world, they renounced, it is said, their desire for sons, for wealth, and for the world, and lived a mendicant life. A Jivan Mukta is no longer vexed by fear, for what was there to fear? It is from a second entity that fear comes. As he himself is without fear, he does not become a cause of fear to anyone. He regards all beings as projections of himself. A Jivan Mukta is free from the illusion of individuality and therefore from the possibility of pain. He who knows Atma overcomes grief. When in the body, thinking this body is I and I am the body, the self is held by pleasure and pain. But when he is free from the body, when he knows himself to be different from the body, neither pleasure nor pain touches him. A Jivan Mukta is free from the binding effects of past action. All works cease to bear fruit. It is consciousness of individuality that impels a man to selfish action, whose good or bad result he must reap at a future date. But the liberated man has realized his individuality as a part of the cosmic illusion and with the attainment of knowledge freed himself from its spell. The awakened person does not reap the fruit of his dream actions. A liberated man is not given to inactivity, which is a characteristic of tamas. He sees action in non action and non action in action. Actions do not cling to him, even while performing actions through his body and senses. He knows his inner self to be actionless and detached. He knows that the self is not the doer, but the witness. It is not the actor, but the spectator. He can never perform an evil action. All his evil instincts were destroyed when he practiced spiritual discipline. Only good comes out of him, and that too without any effort. This is the eternal glory of a knower of Brahma. It never increases or decreases by work. Therefore, one should know the nature of that alone. Knowing it, one is not touched by evil action. Therefore, he who knows it as such becomes self controlled, calm, withdrawn into himself, enduring and concentrated, and sees the self in his own body. He sees all as the self. Evil does not overtake him, but he transcends all evil. Evil does not trouble him, but he consumes all evil. He becomes sinless, taintless, free from doubts, and a knower of Brahma. A liberated soul has attained the blessed state of being free from doubt. All doubts are resolved. His knowledge of Atma is not based upon intellect, but is the result of direct experience. And the illusion, once destroyed, does not come back. A jivanmukta is no longer concerned about bondage or liberation, for these really do not belong to Atma, the self ever free. Bondage and liberation are characteristics of the mind. On account of Maya, an ignorant person thinks of himself as bound and then strives for liberation. But Atma is always free. In the inspiring words of Gaudapada, there is neither death nor birth, neither a struggling nor a bound soul, neither a seeker after liberation nor a liberated one. This indeed is the ultimate truth. So, this video is completed. Thank you for watching this last video of the series of Brahma and his various aspects as described in Upanishads. Thank you, my dear friends. Namaskar.